One of my favorite lures to bass fish with is the jig, and I love it for two reasons. One, that hook set on a freaking jig is addicting, and two, jigs catch for me my biggest bass. Over the past 3 months, I have finished either first, second, or third in the Ohio State Series, and I've done so on this lure. And I've got good news for you. They work all around the country. They work year round. They work clear water. They work in muddy water. They get bit. All right, so jigs, they can be fairly confusing. In my opinion, there's 6 main types of jigs, and I'm gonna walk you through how to fish them, where to fish them, how to rig them, the line, the rod, the reels, best suited for each one, and the trailers to use with them. So the main differences you'll find between all of these jigs is their design and how it allows that jig to move through cover. So let's start off with the jig I feel is incredibly underrated. This guy right here, the swim jig. So swim jigs are specifically designed to move through the water column with ease, often featuring a lighter weed guard and a bullet-shaped head to minimize the resistance in the water. Now, the lighter weed guard and the thinner wire gauge are really essential because bass often strike these swim jigs while they're in motion, similar to this guy right here, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Now, the thinner wire allows for better hook penetration past the barb during the swift hook set, and swim jigs typically range, up to ½ ounce in weight, allowing for versatility in different water conditions, really to maximize this bait's effectiveness. Oh, it's juicy. I love this bait. And there's 2 types of trailers I specifically like for the swim jig. It's gonna be your paddle tail. I like the Biospawn Exo Swim 4s. This is kind of a Kayak paddle tail. These are gonna go really nice. And secondarily, I will put a crawl on it. And I almost exclusively use these guys right here. Missile Baits, Missile D-Bomb. I have it soaking in a bait fuel overnight, and these are my go-to crawl trailers. So the rod's gonna be a 7.2 to 7.6 on a medium heavy or heavy powered rod. I like the length because it really allows you to get more leverage on the cast and manage those pigs that it will catch. I like the reel gear ratio at 7:1 or faster, and the line I use for the swim jig is gonna be Cigar and Vizex line, and you can use anywhere from 15 to 20 pound. I like 17 pound for the swim jig. So when you think swim jig, I want you to think juicy ambush point, like docks, at the end of timber, underwater vegetation, weed lines, big holes, light lily pads, and lily pad lines. I am picking up the swim jig and catching donkeys with it. I know you will too. Next, let's talk about the casting jig. Now, casting jigs, in my opinion, can be confusing. Like if you go over to Tackle Warehouse, start scrolling under their category of casting jigs, you will notice a lot of other jigs under casting jigs that really fall into other categories, in my opinion. But let me break down for you what a casting jig is. So casting jigs are really known for their robustness, right? Casting jigs are built with a flat bottom head and a standard weed guard right here. Their design makes them ideal for various bottom structure and cover types. The flat bottom really helps this jig maintain an upright position, really ensuring a natural presentation of that attached trailer through the water. The beauty of casting jigs are really great staple for bass anglers targeting medium to heavy cover. I like using a casting jig when I find underwater structure and casting these over the structure and then popping them through the tires or over a brush pile, etc. This is why these guys were created. In my opinion, your casting jig is going to be your all-purpose jig, just like the swim jig. I like throwing this on a 7.2 to 7.6 rod. I like the reel geared at 7:1 or more. The line I like for my casting jig is going to be 20-pound fluorocarbon. Once again, Cigar and Vizex. You can get away with 15 and 17. I like the 20, just my personal preference. All right, let's move on to jig number 3, the flipping and punching jigs. Now, flipping jigs are engineered for precision placement in dense cover like heavy wood, brush, usually in shallow water, docks, heavy vegetation. This jig features really stout hooks. I mean, these things are beefy. And typically also what you'll find with these jigs is really robust weed guards, really allowing them to navigate through tough environments without getting snagged up. Now, typically these are going to weigh between 3/8 ounce and 1 ounce, and flipping jigs are kind of more compact in style, really providing a streamlined profile that can penetrate penetrate dense cover effectively. You will usually find me putting on a chunk or some type of crawl to trailer, making them highly effective for eliciting strikes from bass hiding down in that thick cover. I'm usually using a 7.6 to 7.9 heavy power fast action rod for these type of jigs and this type of presentation. And if anything for my reel, over 7:1 gear ratioed is my go-to here. So the line you're going to use for that type of jig is going to be typically your 65-pound braid, especially if you're trying to punch through some heavy mats or really thick lily pads. You want something to be able to cut through there so you can wrestle that bass out. I know I see a lot of guys moving over to a fluorocarbon leader or even full fluoro mainline. So something to consider, all personal preference and the type of fishing that you like to do. All right, let's move on to jig number 4. My second favorite jig is this guy. This is gonna be your football head jig. I love these things. Really great for fishing rocky bottoms. It's gonna allow for that jig to go up and over rocks without getting snagged, eliciting that bite. This one I actually even added the eyes on myself. All right, so these jigs typically come in weights ranging from 3/8 of an ounce up to 1 ounce. They have a moderate weed guard, often paired with a crawl trailer. This is a big Joshy paddle tail crawl. If a crawdad had a baby with a paddle tail, this is what you get, the old paddle crawl, and I love it. So the football head's design is particularly effective for maintaining contact with the bottom while providing a stable upright presentation, right, that appeals to bass feeding on crayfish. So if you ever see riprap or a dam ledge that's at a steep angle, a lot of anglers will reach for their square bill crankbait. I am first reaching for my 3/8 of an ounce football head jig, casting it to shore and popping it down the underwater embankment. When you feel that double tug, enjoy that hook set. I love a 7.2 to 7.6 foot rod, medium heavy or heavy powered rod. I like a Rio gear ratioed at 7:1 like my other jigs or faster. And the line I use for these guys is usually going to be around either 17-pound Seaguar and Vizex or 20-pound. All right, let's move over to something a little bit different. Next, I have the Finesse Jig, for really great for conditions involving smaller fish. It's going to be greater for cold water, but also really great for waters that get absolutely hammered, highly pressured water. You might want to size down your giant meal if they're not biting and head over to the Finesse Jig. So these jigs are generally lighter, weighing in between 3/16 to a 1/4 ounce. This is a really tiny guy. This is a ball head type of finesse jig by Kayak. I believe it's called the Mono. But typically what you find with these guys is a spider cut skirt, as you can kind of see here. You can pair these finesse jigs with a small crawl or some type of creature bait and really be deadly there. You're really great for clear water bass fishing. And I also really like these. If you were to throw a giant meal into shallow water, you likely spook the fish. You usually can throw this out, get a silent entry, and get those bass interested versus spooking them. All right, so the rod on a finesse jig is going to be important here. You want a softer tip on that bad boy so you can get a lot of distance and whip that little lure as far as you possibly can. Also, you're going to want some medium power rod, because if you have too much power on your rod, these hooks are a light gauge wire and you will bend them out on a powerful hook set. So you want a rod that gives a bit. All right, so you could use a spinning setup for this or use your BFS setups. And for the line, it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 8 pound Seaguar and Vizex line. So tell me guys, what's your favorite jig type and your favorite jig brand? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below. Let's move on to jig number 6. All right, let's talk about the vibrating jig. These are really effective because they're going to mimic bluegill and shad and really entice that chase, which is a lot of fun. So there's a lot of different ways you can retrieve this. Typically where you're going to want to fish this, you want to cast the vibrating jig along points, along ledges. A lot of times when I cast this out, I'll throw it out and let this fall all the way to the bottom and then retrieve it back up from the bottom. If you get caught in grass, not a problem. Just rip it through the grass. A lot of times you'll get that reaction bite after you rip it through the grass. So a lot of times what I do is like to throw this guy out, let it fall to the bottom. Instead of just doing a full retrieve all the way back to you, just go and let it fall back down. You'll feel the vibration in your rod, and that vibration is going to pick up the attention through the lateral line of that largemouth bass. I like using 20-pound Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon for its visibility and sensitivity. The rod's going to be a medium heavy fast action rod to ensure really that you get the right vibration and control in this bad boy. They're going to hit it in motion. Now sometimes when they hit it in motion, you don't have the opportunity to give a nice swift hook set, and so typically when I'm landing a bass on a vibrating jig, what I'll do is I'll actually use a net for that, because a lot of times you'll lose that bass at the boat because you weren't able to get that swift hook set in and penetrate that bass past the barb. Now this is a really great lure for running it next to stumps and over rocks. However, if you don't have any of that where you're fishing, create your own deflection, right? As you're going through the water, just kill it and let it fall. You want to vary your retrieve speed. Maybe you can slow it down, maybe you can speed it up. There's all kinds of things that you can do with the bladed jig to elicit that bite. I'll be completely honest with you, I don't love fishing the vibrating jig. I know there's guys out there who will swear by it. I will typically try a swim jig first before I head over to the vibrating jig, but a lot of times, especially if it's dirty water and I know the bass are gonna have a hard time seeing that swim jig, I will tie this on to get that extra vibration to draw more bass in when they can't see it. Now, there are a variety of other types of jigs out there. You got your ball head jigs, you got your hair jigs, you got your skipping jigs, you got your grass jigs, but I just wanted to start with the most popular types, and I will make another video for the rest coming out in a little bit. Now, if you love jig fishing, I got the video for you, the top 6 jig modifications every angler should know. You can check that video out right there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you.